Hi all, in this video I'm going to show you how Jenkins can be integrated with ACI. Jenkins is a CI/CD tool that is used very regularly by developers, and with Jenkins and ACI integration you can use Jenkins to push Ansible or even Terraform scripts to ACI. One of the very new features that has come in 5.1 version of NAE is that it's possible now to have Jenkins send the configuration to NAE instead of writing it directly to ACI. So this is very nice because NAE can then do a pre-validation check and make sure that everything is okay with the configuration before it's allowed to be pushed to ACI. So what I have here is Jenkins, which I've installed on a Ubuntu box on containers, and I've mapped the container to the base machine. And it has a bunch of Ansible scripts that I put in there. And if you see this demo and you like it, then you can read the rest of the article and it will guide you step by step on how to install it. It's very simple if you just use the method that I have there, because everything is done for you and you don't have to worry about configuring Jenkins, installing and configuring, and putting up all the scripts. So once you get into the screen, you log in with Cisco and Cisco and hit the sign in button. And what you're going to see is a bunch of scripts over here that I've put into Jenkins. So I'm going to take you through quite a few of these scripts and show you how to use them and how they actually map to Ansible on the back end. So this is the Ubuntu base VM on which I'm running the containers. If you look at Docker PS, the top two are actually of concern over here. The bottom two is something else that's not really relevant. So the first one is the Jenkins-ACI, and as you can see, it's mapped to port 10,000, and the internal Jenkins is using port 8080. So basically, if I target to this base machine on port 10,000, that's how I reach Jenkins. And the second one, you don't really need it for ACI. The reason for that is I've just put up another CentOS small container over there, so you can, there are some scripts over here in case you wanted to try to configure a remote Linux box with Jenkins. So before I go further, let me just show you the release of Ubuntu I'm using. So basically I'm using 18.04.5 Bionic Beaver release of Ubuntu. Now let's look inside over here. So if you look over here, I have 4 directories over here, and you can just the instructions will be there. You can just do a git clone and get them in there, and then the main Jenkins configuration is over here. And if you look over here, the Docker Compose file is here. And let me just go through this just a little bit in case you do want to install it. So the part that you need to be concerned about is this part, depending on how you want to map it. In my case, port 80 was not available on this machine. Plus, I have a reason for having port 10,000 be reachable from the outside. I've opened a hole for that to just GitHub. So that way GitHub can reach this container on port 10,000. And then these are the volumes that I've mapped. So basically on my local machine, I've mapped the Jenkins home directory inside the container to var Jenkins home, and likewise I've mapped my Jenkins data to my Jenkins data inside the container. So you're probably going to have to change this based on what you would like. I would recommend not messing with this at all. And then over here, this is what the container, the Jenkins container will have as its etc host file. And if you notice, I have a common network. So basically the Jenkins container and the remote host, which is the CentOS box, can talk to each other on the same network. So that's the reason for doing that. And let me see what else over here. So let me also show you the my Jenkins folder. So if you look over here, I have this Ansible folder. And inside that folder, I have three different folders. If I go to CD Apic and take a look over there, these are all the Ansible scripts. For instance, if you notice, this is a very simple Ansible script to make a tenant. And then if I go to CentOS 7, there's a couple of scripts over here for if you wanted to check and see how you can use Jenkins with Ansible to push configuration to a Linux box. And also I have MSO over here, and I have some scripts over here that I've actually written and explained in unofficial, but these I have not integrated with ACI, but I've put them in there. And you can feel free to go ahead and do that yourself once you know how to. So now going back to Jenkins, those scripts that you saw on the back end are all mapped over here. So let's take a quick look at one of the scripts. So if I look at make tenant, for instance, then if I go to configure, you're going to see that it is basically these are all the parameters. So all those double curly brackets, which generally get their information from the var file, the variables are populated from the Ansible var files. Instead of using the Ansible var files, Jenkins is providing the variables to Ansible. So the username is the variable, and the default value is Ansible. So I have a user called Ansible, which is set up in ACI, and when you go to the documentation that I have in the write-up that I'll do, it will explain all that. And then basically the certificate for Ansible is also going to be installed in the Apic, and the tenant name will be SM Jenkins Ansible or whatever. You could change this while running it too. And there could be a description over here that will show up when someone's running it. There's the private key, and there's where the certificate is. And then if you, so these parameters are choices. So in my particular case, I have two Apics, and I'll show you my NAE in a bit. But I have DMZ Apic 7 and DMZ Apic 8. So when the operator runs it, they are going to be able to choose which one they want. And then in this particular case, I'm not doing any source code management integration. These are very basic scripts, and the purpose of this is for someone who doesn't know ACI, you could just give them this front end, and without knowing ACI, they can be guided through configuring a tenant based on your template very, very easily. Then over here, I have color ANSI console. So basically, when I look at the console from Jenkins, it will have colors of yellow and red. So red would mean that there were some errors. And then the host file is this is the Ansible host file. I just pointed it to this place, and notice it's in my Jenkins data, so you can get to it from your base directory. And then on the advanced side, so this is something that you have to do. On the advanced side, that same variable that I had, so that variable, that becomes the key, and then the value of it is $host. So this is the value, that's the key. So when you, so in Ansible, I have double curly brackets with basically, let's say, if I go on the top, I have host name, for instance, would be double curly brackets, and it would map to host. And then host maps to a choice of DMZ APIC 8 or DMZ APIC 7. Okay, now this host, the name of this host then maps to basically basically the key of host, and the value is $host. So basically whatever value I defined on top would get put in because of this $host. When you look at some of the other scripts over here, the very basic bash scripts that I have, in case you're not familiar with Jenkins, that will become very clear. So that's how you would run it. So let me get out of this and let's go back to the dashboard. Just to show you before I do anything, these scripts over here, 1 through 9, are for creating a tenant, and those map to the backend Ansible APIC scripts that I have. And Ansible's CentOS 7 is actually going to be using an Ansible script to configure some stuff on Ansible on CentOS 7, which is a different Linux box. And then these are actually sort of tied, but we are not going to look at this because we are going to look at this declarative pipeline. But feel free to look at these and execute them. And once you're going to configure, it would be very easy to understand what's going on behind the scenes. But basically, when you integrate with Git, the idea is that you do a Git commit, and that configuration gets automatically pushed to ACI. So how does Jenkins know that the Git commit happened? So there are two ways of doing it. One is with source code management polling, which means that Jenkins will poll continuously at a given interval that you define in a cron job, and it's all GUI driven. So you define that, and it will poll Ansible, your Ansible repository where maybe your tenant configuration is, and if it sees a change, it will immediately pull it down and then send it to APIC, right? And this is generally used when you when GitHub is not able to come in to your container from the outside because you have edge firewalls that don't allow that policy. This is often used for that reason. The webhook is a different way of doing it, which basically means as soon as you do a commit, GitHub will actually send a webhook message to the container, and that's how the container would know, Jenkins would know that something has changed, and the code would get downloaded, and once it downloads the code, then it's going to push it to ACI. Now notice that in these two cases, I said it's going to push to ACI. However, your configuration may be back. And we'll give you a demo right here on how that might be the case with overlapping IP subnets and BDs that I'll try to push. And you're going to see that if I did it that way, then it would be a problem because a bad configuration would go to the APIC. So that's where this script comes in, and this is basically a pipeline script. So I'll talk about pipelines very quickly. So basically there are 4 kinds of pipelines in Jenkins, and the top 2, the initial 2 are GUI driven, and they're very easy. You just make the different scripts, and you can say, and you can then do conditional statements saying that if the first script hasn't finished, then the second script cannot start, or if the first script errors out, the second script will not be able to run. And those are the GUI driven, those are the older ways of doing it, and people still use them. But the better way to do it, which gives you the most flexibility, is the scripted way to do it. So in the scripted way, there are two kinds of methods of doing it. One is called the scripted pipeline, and one is called the declarative pipeline. The latest and the most flexible way is the declarative pipeline, and for that reason, we are going to show you this code running on declarative pipeline. So now let's run these Apex scripts, the basic ones, and we can do that quite fast, and I'll show you the outputs of them. First of all, let's go to the Apex, and this is, I have two Apex over here, Apex 8, or Site 1 we call it, and Apex 7, and we are going to target it to Apex 8. So I'll log in. Okay, I'm in my Apex, and if I now go to tenants, you're going to see that there is a bunch of tenants over here, and that's all we have right here right now. So now I'll go back to the Jenkins dashboard, and let me start with the first one, and I'll click it, and then I'm going to say build with parameters, and you're going to see that those parameters came in, and I could change these as I want, but for simplicity's sake right now, I'm going to take the defaults. Remember, I had made Apex 7 and Apex 8 a choice parameter and made Apex 8 the default. So that's why Apex 8 is clicked, but I could have chosen Apex 7 if I wanted to. So if in your environment, if you have many Apex, then you could use it for in that way. So now I'll just say build, and once I say build, you can see that the job is running, and the job is done, and I see a tick mark. I can click on that guy, and I can say console output, and basically you can see that I have my Ansible output right over here, and if I go to my Apex, you're going to see that SM Jenkins Ansible has now shown up on Apex. Of course, there's nothing in it right now except for a shell of a tenant. If I go to application profiles and networking, it's all empty. There should be nothing in there. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and run the rest of the scripts very quickly, and they all have the same principle. So I'm going to do the VRF, and I'm going to then say build with parameters. Again, I'm going to take all the defaults, and I can change anything I want, but I'll take the defaults. So I'll say build, and it's building it, and basically it's done. So now I'll go to the next one, and I'll say make BD, and I'll say build with parameters. I'll take all the defaults, and I'll say build, and the BD is getting built, and it should be done. It's done. Now I'm going to go and execute the next one, which is make BD subnet, and build with parameters. Again, I'll take the default of 10, 10, 10, 1, and notice how these are tied. This is tied to the VRF, and so basically I'll say build, and it's going to build it, and then it's done. And then next I'll go to, I could run it again if I wanted more subnets. Then I'll go to number 5, make application profile, and build it. And then I'll just take the defaults, and I'll build one application profile. So it's building it, and it's done. So now I'll go to number 6, which is create contracts and filters. And I'll say build with parameters, and I have a contract which is going to be called contract C1 with one subject, and then ether type will be IP with TCP and SSH. So and reverse filter is true. And this is a Boolean parameter that I put in there. When you look, you can see that it's very, very simple to put that in. So you say build, and it's building it. And now, once this is built, I'm going to actually put in one more subject, and let's say I'll allow port 80. So all I have to do is just run it again. And this time, I have my choice. So what I can do is I can keep the same subject, but I can change the filter name. So I'll say that that same subject will have one more filter, and that filter will have its own entry. And it's going to be with the same contract, same subject, and over here I'll change it to, let's say, port 80, and then I'll say build. And it's building it. So now I would have the contract, which will have one subject and a SSH filter as filter 1, and a HTTP filter as filter 2. So now let me go to 7, and let's create EPGs. And over here I'll say build with parameters. Okay, so the first EPG that I will create is going to be web EPG. So I'll say build, and it's building it. And then once this finishes, I'm going to create one more EPG, and I'll call it DB EPG, for instance. And now I'll change this, and I'll make it DB. And I'll say build. So now I have two EPGs on that bridge domain. Once this is done, of course, and it's done. So now let me go back to the dashboard, and now let's add the contract that we made. So build parameters, and then basically I'm going to put the provider on the web EPG. So I'll say build, and then once that is done, I'll go ahead and put the consumer on the DB EPG. So build with parameters, and then all I have to do here is change this to DB, and then this would become the consumer, and I'll say build. So that's done, and basically, so that's done. And now I have my contracts. So now let's go and do the Vmm binding and build with parameters. And if I go down over here, I'm sitting on Fabric 8. So I know that Fabric 8 only has one Vmm domain, so that's the one. And this is going with web EPG, so I say build. And it's just now tying in the web part. Now you could take this much further and use Terraform or even Ansible to spin up VMs on vCenter and connect up the port groups and everything else from a template in vCenter. So anyway, so build with parameters, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to set my DB EPG also to that same Vmm domain, and I say build. And now that I've done that, once this finishes, let's go to APIC, and you can see in APIC that I have my VRF. Let's go and take a look at the contract, and you can see that the contract has one subject, and if I click on it over there, you're going to see whenever that comes up, so let's look at policy over here, and you're going to see that it has one subject, and if I look at the subject, it shows right over there that it has two filters, but you can see it over here also, and filter 1 and filter 2. And if you went and looked at the filter on the bottom, you're going to see that the filters are SSH and basically SSH and HTTP. If I go and click on the contract and I look at the topology of the contract, then you're going to see that the contract maps to my two EPGs, web and DB, and this is the provider and this is the consumer. And again, if I went into my application profile, I can see that I have the two EPGs, and if you notice, the Vmm domains have been bound to that, so this is all ready to go. Of course, I haven't done the L3 outs, but it's just doing it. I just wanted to do this for a short demo. So this is how you can get a person who is not familiar with ACI. And one of the issues that we hear a lot from customers are that people who are not very well trained on ACI, they see so many options that they kind of get dazzled, right? So again, having less options is sometimes good, but having more options is always better, because when you need something and the option is not there, then obviously you're not happy, right? But this is one way to cut down the options for a person who just needs to run a template and do provisioning. Okay, so that's that. And in the next section, I'm going to show you how to use the pipeline script where NAE will come and do the verification, and only then the configuration will be pushed. So before we dive into it, let's go to the concept one more time. And this has always been an issue, right? Automation is great, but if you push the wrong config, you can destroy your fabric as fast as you can build it, which is very, very scary. So now, in DevOps, you always want a script or some kind of intelligence to check your script to make sure that it's passing everything. And if it fails, then configuration is not allowed to get pushed. So now, we saw that, yes, we can send configuration to the APIC directly from Jenkins, but now we have no guarantee that the configuration is good. It would still push it, and then you would have a problem. So now, how do you prevent that? So this is the mechanism. So what you do is you have your local machine, let's say, and you make a BD configuration or tenant configuration, whatever. In this case, we are going to demo with add BD, and I'm going to do change my Ansible configuration, and I'm going to say git add, git commit, and then git push. Soon as I do that, then that configuration gets pushed to my GitHub repo for that BD, the one that I created, let's say. Now, once the GitHub gets it, if I have webhook configured, then webhook will go and send a message to Jenkins. Or if I cannot do webhook because of firewall reasons, then I can say that Jenkins will pull GitHub every so often, defined by the cron job. Now, if you look at my SCM polling script over there, I've said that poll every 1 minute. Obviously, that's not the way to do it. But since this is a lab and I don't want to wait, I've done it that way. But webhook is generally better because your Jenkins box is sitting there and not doing anything until it hears something. So it's better for resources that way. But anyway, the message comes into Jenkins that something has changed. As soon as Jenkins sees that, it downloads the config. So now, instead of sending it directly to the APIC, it will first send it to ND. And I'll show you the configuration on how that is done. And again, if you are interested, you can follow through and get my GitHub repo, clone it. All the instructions will be there and all the scripts will be there. So you can just change it to your NAE, IP and all that and run it and test it out. So anyway, so now the information is sent to ND with the configuration, the proposed configuration. And now ND will do its verification, and once it verifies it, Jenkins will poll again and query ND to say that what are the results of your verification? Is it a pass or a fail? Is it a go or a no-go? So once the results come back, then if it fails, Jenkins will just stop it right there. If it passes, then Jenkins will send it to APIC, and your configuration is guaranteed to be good. So that's the whole idea about this method of checking gives you. I do want to make a correction. I just realized that I kept saying ND because that's what I put on my slide by mistake, and I wasn't thinking. But it's not ND that's doing this, it's NAE who does the pre-verification check. ND in this case is running on NAE. So sorry about that, and I don't feel like re-recording this section. So I'll just leave it at that, and you understand what I mean. All right. So now let's look at the most interesting case, which is going to be the actual integration of this declarative pipeline script with NAE for pre-verification. So let's log into our NAE, and I'll go through the Nexus Dashboard, though you could go there directly. So all right, I'm in my Nexus Dashboard, and here's my network assurance engine, 511A. So just so you know, this so Nexus Insights and multi-site orchestrator are very, very nicely integrated right now with ND, meaning they have single sign-on and everything else, and you put the sites in and they automatically flow into those applications, or we call them services now. NAE 5.1 is still not there, but the next release of NAE coming out very, very soon will have that. So, so just bear that in mind as I go through this. So I click on NAE, and I am going to get into NAE. Unfortunately, I do have to log in because single sign-on is not there. And this is, as you see, this is local password, no radius here. So I'm signing in, and I got the password wrong, sorry. That should be admin. And okay, I'm in, and if you notice, I have, so let me go here first. I'm going to go to Assurance Group, and for the sake of this demo, to make it quicker, what I've done is I've stopped, if you look at the view, so I have my MSO. By the way, MSO is now also, can also be put into NAE for in the Assurance Group, so you can get statistics and everything else from MSO also. And these are the two fabrics that are associated with an MSO. But if you look at view current schedule, I've stopped it. I could run it. But remember that when you run the pre-verification check, you will have to turn off the assurance group polling, because it cannot do that. It's always been like that. You cannot do a assurance group verification when your schedule is running. So I've turned it off. Now let's go to change management and manage change analysis. And basically you see that there is nothing over here. Now I could go ahead, the old method of doing it, and I could go ahead and basically put in, create a new epoch analysis and go that route, and then put in my JSON config and go that route. But obviously this is not what we are showing over here. That's always been there. So what we are showing here is how Jenkins will push that in over here for the verification. So the first thing that we need to do is kind of understand how this all happens. So if this particular GitHub, this particular directory is tied to a GitHub repo. And if you look over here, I have, these are the things that I have in that repo, okay? So the way that this verification works is that Jenkins has a language called Groovy. So basically, if you look at this file, Jenkins file pipeline script.groovy, that is the main file that has been put into the pipeline. And I'm going to show you the pipeline configuration also on the things that you need to look at. So let's do a CAD or a view on that. All right. So let's go from the beginning. So so the pipeline in the declarative module happens in stages. So and you start off with pipeline. It looks much like a JSON format if you think about it. And then these are the stages. The first stage is that it will actually go and it will do some dependency install, and it will do ANSI color, because I'm not doing it through the UI anymore. So I'm doing it all through the script. And the interesting thing is that the Groovy script itself is in your GitHub repo. So when you run this, the very first time you have to click on it and manually run it. So it configures all that. But from then onwards, a GitHub commit will do the trick. So basically, this is my GitHub repo. Again, in the documentation, what I'll make you do is I'll make you fork this. So then you'll have it in your own GitHub repo, and then you're going to change this name to your own GitHub username, and then you can use it. And then basically it's going to install the Ansible modules, and there's a requirements.txt file there, so it will install all that stuff. And then stage 2. So the first stage is just for its own configuration. In this case, you can make the stages however you want, and you can make as many stages as you want. So in this particular stage, what we are doing is we are generating an ACI config. Now there is this new option that has come in on ACI, on the Cisco ACI Ansible module called check. So when you say --check, what it means, in conjunction with the actual BD and the BD definition YAML file, in conjunction with that, it will actually not push the config to ACI. What it will do is it will just make a configuration file out of the BD config, or out of the tenant config, or whatever config you gave it. So basically over here it's saying that it will define a file called config.json, and then basically it will run this playbook. So this is going to be the playbook that is going to hold my actual script that I want, or my playbook, my YAML file, which I want to send to ACI. However, it will not allow it to write directly to ACI, but it will do this extra check and basically just write it to a config file. Now, the next stage over here is going to be verify ACI config. So on this verify ACI config, again, we are doing the same thing. And by the way, this dev/ACI, it will automatically make that directory in the workspace. Once you play with it, you can go in and see it does it in the var Jenkins home workspace directory. It will make that by itself, and then it will make a dev folder over there. So now what it will do is that it will take this config file, and it will run this playbook called naepvc.yaml, and I'll show you those. And basically it will this will instruct it to push it to NAE. So once it goes to NAE, then the next stage is that it will actually go ahead and basically sorry, the top one is the verification. So this is where it will send it to NAE and for verification. And then over here, if the verification results come in as passed, then it will push the config to ACI. And that's basically the configuration on the main Groovy file. Now let's go ahead and go to the actual configs that we are going to wanting to push. So if you look over here, the short ACI demo.yaml, that's this guy over here. So we are going to take a look at that first. So cat short ACI demo.yaml. All right. So actually, let me do a view on it. All right. So now let's go through it. So basically, what this is doing is that it's going to use my DMZ APK Again, remember in the Docker config file, in the docker compose.yaml, we did those extras, and that's how it puts it into the etc host of this container, so it can resolve it by DMZ APIC 8 locally. And now over here we are just defining the variables inline, and then the keys and all that. If you download it, you'll see that you'll have to make your own keys, and there are scripts over there that the documentation will talk about. It will put the sorts in the correct place. Okay, and then I'm going to push this gateway. So remember, we had a gateway on that BD, which was 10.10.10.1. So we are going to make one more BD, and that BD is going to be called BD10, and we are going to push 10.10.100.1. That's my intention. And then basically the next stuff over here is all the rest of the configuration. So basically it's looking at the tenant config, and then the VRF config, and then this is the BD config, and it's taking these variables in double curly brackets from the top. And then the output path, this is the important part in all of this. The output path is config.json, which was defined in that Groovy file before. So if you don't put this in, then it's not going to work. So you would have to use the output file to be config.json or whatever name you defined earlier in the Groovy file in the main folder. And then it will create a subnet, and it will take the 10.10.100.1 from the top variable. So that's what that is. And then the next thing that I want to show you is the NAE. So VI-NAE pvc.yaml, and this is the YAML file that instructs it to push it to NAE. So again, this is in this particular release. Again, you have to. There's no certs or anything for NAE that I can tell, at least. You have to hard code it in there, and again, you probably don't want to put this in a public Git repo. So make that repo private, and in the configuration file of Jenkins, you can actually put in a password for private Git repo. If it's a public repo, you don't need a password, but these passwords are only temporary, so I'm going to change them, so that's not going to be there for long. So then pre-change analysis, this is the variable name, and this is going to become my assurance group, my NAE pre-verification group name that will go in over there. So 327, so that's yesterday that I had done it, and I'll keep the same name because I've deleted all this from NAE. And then the login parameters are feeding in over here, and this assurance group over here, AG name is actually the fabric name. If you go look at my config, so fabric 1 is where we'll push it. We call it fabric 8, but it's site 1. If you go look at that, and of course there's nothing over here. There shouldn't be, because I deleted everything, and there isn't. So basically, if you look at that name, DMZ RCDN Site 1, and so DMZ RCDN Site 1. So that's the name of the fabric as defined in NAE. Okay, and then the name. This is of course the variable that maps to the top. On this guy, so the name is going to be Jenkins 327.2, and basically that's it. So this is going to create the pre-change analysis, and this is basically over here. It's going to query for it, and then if the results are true, then it will send it. If not, if it fails, then it won't send it to. Then Jenkins will not send it to ACI. So that's what that is. And now let me go to Jenkins, and I will show you the configuration and explain a little bit more on the pipeline configuration. So when you make a new configuration, and notice how these are the steps that were defined in the YAML files. So when you make a pipeline configuration, when you make a new configuration, you go and you say that new item, right? And then you have to choose freestyle pipeline. So in this case, in all the other cases, I chose freestyle project. In this case, I chose pipeline project. Okay, and then I'll show you the rest of the options. So declarative pipeline, and now let's go to configure. And so I discussed that was a pipeline project. Notice that it's now GitHub project. It's a GitHub project, and the project URL is this. So this is my GitHub directory. Notice it doesn't have the .git on the end, and also it has my name. So so you're going to change that to your own name because you're going to fork my directories into your own repo. Okay, and then build triggers. In this particular case, I'm doing GitHub trigger for GitHub hook trigger. Okay, you could have done instead. You could have done a poll SCM, and then the schedule would be the cron format, and then basically what would happen is that Jenkins would keep polling GitHub. But again, I prefer GitHub hook trigger if possible, so I'll keep it at that. And then in the advanced pipeline, and notice how as I move this, the top changes to the different tabs, and I could actually just go from here and go to the different sections. It's actually really nice. So on the pipeline side, again, you're going to change this name. So this is again the actual repo with the .git. This is a public repo, so I don't need credentials. But if you do a private repo, then you can put in your credentials over here. And then I'm going to run it from the master branch. So, I'm putting everything in master. And that's pretty much it. Oh, there was one more thing. Oh, yeah, this one. So the top one is the older method that I was talking about. It's still the script method, but it's the older script method of doing it. The most flexible one is the pipeline script from SCM. So that's the one you want to use for this. So basically, I've covered pretty much everything, I think. And now let's go and actually run the script. So I'm not going to change anything, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm sitting over here. So now I'm going to go into my directory, and you already saw the config on. I want to push 10.10.101/24, and what I'll do here is any change in the repo will make it trigger. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the README file. And what I'll do here is 3. Okay, as I'm doing this, as I did this, oh, sorry, I didn't commit it yet. So I have this script here that you can use. And it just updated, and there, the script kicked in. Because the webhook just came in from GitHub. So now let's go over here, and you will see that it will start very soon, and it's already started. So as you can see, it's going through the stages. It's generating the config now, and it can take about 3-4 minutes or so. It's generating the config, and this verification on the very end of it is when you get to know if it's passing or failing. So let's just give it a bit. This is the interesting part, and it's going. I'm just going to wait for it. Let's see how it happens. It should pass because there is nothing wrong with this config. And it's still going. Still waiting on it. It's going. Almost there. Very soon it will say over here, almost done. And the push happens very fast. It's this config, verify ACI config, because it's pushing it to NAE, then it's querying NAE to find out if NAE is done with the analysis, and then based on that it will do the push ACI config. Okay, so that passed, the verification passed, and the push happens really fast, like I said. So if you notice, there is a check mark here. Let's go and take a quick look at the console output and see what happened over there. And console output, so basically if you look at it, there's no red anywhere, right? So it's all looking good. It's all looking good. And it passed it, so everything is good. It got pushed down. Let's go verify on Epic, and I'm still not logged out, so let's go to BD, and there is my new BD10, and there is the subnet for it that I pushed. Okay, and if I go here, you will see that the subnet is 10.10.10.1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do this again, and this time I'm going to make another BD, but this time I'll put 10.10.10.1 over there as the default gateway, because let's say that you made a mistake, or the operator made a mistake and they forgot, right? They have many BDs and they just didn't, in a hurry, they didn't remember that that was overlapping address. Okay, so then let's go back. Before I go anywhere, let me show you what happened over here. So now, as you see, that name, Jenkins 327.2, that name is over there. And if I go and look at the view epoch delta, it basically says that before and after, nothing changed, which means there were no alarms raised or no issues raised. So everything is good, so that's why it passed, so that's good. All right, so now let's go and do this again. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to ACI folder, and I'm going to do a VI short demo YAML, and I'm going to go and change the gateway to 10.10.10.1. Okay, and that's all I have to do here, nothing else here. And then let's look at NAE, and that name of the pre-change analysis, I'll make it 328.1. Today's 328. So that's my first one on 328. So, all right. Now I'm going to do a git commit on it. And before I do that, let's go back on this screen so we can actually watch the file. And I'll come over here, and I have this script over here, so I don't have to continuously do it that way. So / git push sh, and it pushed it, and you can see the job kicked in. And now that the job has kicked in, let's see what happens. It's bound to fail because NAE will not pass it. So the checkout and dependencies install was already there, so it hardly takes any time. ACI config is generated, so verify ACI config has to fail. And it's going to go like it's going, and at the very end, that's what I noticed, because the query happens towards the very bottom part. or the right side of it. So it's going to say that it failed, and then because of that, the whole job would fail. And let's look at this a little bit more, give it some time, let's give it a little bit more time. So it's definitely going to be pushing it, and that PBC name will come in on NAE, but we'll go look at NAE also again, and you're going to see that the analysis will say that it's no good because you have overlapping subnets on BD on the same VRF. And it's going to go a little bit more before it fails. The query happens towards like almost the end of it, seems like. It's almost there, and it will complete because the next one will automatically fail, so it will never push it to ACI. Almost there, it's going to fail now. Almost looks like it's passing, but it's going to fail. There, it failed. All right, so now let's go look at the console. And on the console output, you're clearly going to see, we'll go for the red color towards the bottom. And you can see right there, overlapping subnets have been configured on the VDPG. So this is coming from NAE. Okay, so let's go back to NAE, and let's go back to change management reanalysis, and you can see that 328 is on top. So that's the latest one, and view epoch delta, and let's take a look at it, and you can clearly see that it has a difference over here and here. So let's go and take a look here and see what it says. And you can see that it says overlapping subnets across VDs and VRF. So there you go. That was the issue. And because of that reason, ACI was not allowed to get the configs. As you see, config didn't come in. Okay. So that was the demo. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you like this, then please feel free to follow through the rest of the document that I'm going to write after this, and then you can very easily, I'll describe step by step on how to get it set up very quickly, so you don't have to configure it from scratch with all these items already there, and what you have to change to make it work in your environment. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.